I just think we have such an excellent pool of colleagues on the funds development team. I was talking with Mary Catherine, and after each interview process, I think, gosh, if I was hiring and looking for a job right now, I don't know that I would make the cut anymore.
I'll be the eyes so that I just can be.
This is another episode of a special series called Enough for All of the podcast Walk, Talk, Listen. This series sheds light on 75 years of an NGO called CWS. My name is Maurice Bloem and I welcome you to another episode of Walk, Talk, Listen. Welcome everybody again. I'm so pleased to meet yet again with another colleague. And like usual, I will ask her to introduce herself. And so, Mary Catherine, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, I'm Mary Catherine Hinds, and I'm the Senior Director of Fundraising Strategy for Church World Service. I'm glad to be on this podcast.
Hey, Mary Catherine, and can you tell us since when you have been working for Church World Service?
I started in September of 2003.
Wow. And have you always been in the same position?
No, I started out as the Assistant Regional Director for the Carolinas. So at that time, it was North Carolina and South Carolina. And I was doing fundraising through events and congregational work and individuals just in North Carolina and South Carolina, and working alongside a team in an office there. And we slowly added on territory, and we added on Virginia and Georgia and Florida. And I became the associate regional director for that area. Then when the regional director of the Southeast region hired, I was then hired on as the regional director for the Southeast region, and then became a managing regional director for the whole kind of super region, and then eventually became the national director for our Crop Hunger Walk events throughout the United States, and then moved into fundraising strategy that looked beyond just events, but looking at all the different ways that we raise funds for our important mission.
Can you tell a little bit about your background in terms of education? So, how did you get involved with the work that you're doing now? How is that related with your schooling?
So I went to a liberal arts college and had a double major, English and women's studies. While I was there, also very active in justice ministries, taught English as a second language. I always knew that I wanted to do something in the nonprofit world. And so shortly after graduating from college, I joined the United States Peace Corps and went to East Africa, a small country called Eritrea, and there taught English and also did regional girls conferences where on the weekends we'd pull together girl students from across the country to do intensive training in math, science, and health. And in that time, I knew that global hunger and poverty was the issue that really mattered the most to me. And came back from the Peace Corps thinking that perhaps policy was where I could make the most change. I went to work for our governor in North Carolina, and then realized that my idealism that was crushed a little bit to realize how much money was involved in politics, and so thought maybe direct service was the way to go. Went into fundraising for a local nonprofit that provided support to vulnerable women and their children, and but always knew that I wanted something more. And
Mhm.
found Church Full Service and thought, oh my goodness, it's the total package. We do policy, we do direct service, and we also do sustainable.
And when you decided to apply for Church Full Service, was that the first time you heard about CWS, or you heard about CWS before already?
No, actually, when I worked for the governor, his term was coming due, so we all knew we had to get new jobs. And I saw, I was kind of searching where was I going to end up, and I'm raised Catholic, and so I would get this regular publication called the National Catholic Reporter, and I was reading through it, and there was an advertisement for this position of assistant director for the Carolinas. And I read through it. I said, "Oh, this is amazing! This is exactly what I want to do." Uh, had my letters of reference and was so excited. This is my calling. And I didn't even get an interview, and I was crushed. I just cried. I remember calling the HR director at Church World Service to check on the status, and she said, "I'm sorry, we've already filled that position." I found out later it was an internal position that had been promoted, so they didn't even have interviews. So I went to work trying to make sure that if I ever got another opportunity, so I started tracking Church Full Service from then on, and checking the employment boards. I said, I would mop the floors to work for this organization. Luckily, I didn't have to. 3 years later, the woman who was in the position that got the position when I first applied, she decided to move on to do different work, and so they opened it back up, and I got an interview, and rest is history.
Yeah. So you had not heard about the crop hunger walks before you applied?
Yes, I had never heard of Church World Service,
Mm-hmm.
but I heard of Crop Hunger Walk. When I guess it was maybe the mid 80s. I was a member of a church in a small town in North Carolina, Gastonia. And I remember the crop walk footprints that the church would put up whenever anybody signed up for their hunger walk. I only remember one walk being a part of it. I guess it wasn't my parents' thing, but I do remember that from St. Michael's Catholic Church in Gastonia, North Carolina, the 1 year with the footprints along the wall. But I didn't make that connection that I didn't know who Church World Service was back then. It was really the crop walk was the brand that people knew. One of the first things that I did when I got to step up into the position to oversee our crop hunger walk events was to add by CWS.
Mm-hmm.
So every time we say crop hunger walk by CWS to help people make that connection. Yeah.
Hey, what do you like about the work of CWS?
There's so many things that fulfill my buckets working at CWS. I think one of the most inspiring components is how much we work with volunteers. Volunteers are running our crop hunger walks, having our blanket Sundays, raising funds, and I know all organizations have volunteers, but for an organization that's addressing global hunger and poverty, access to clean water, displacement of people, our volunteers are doing this out of the goodness of their own heart. They don't have a vested interest. They don't have a cousin who is struggling with no clean water, and so to work with volunteers who give so much time and energy towards something that has no personal benefit, that they are truly committed to just building a better world. That's truly inspiring. And then as an organization to work for Church World Service, like I said before, it's the total package, looking at the holistic approach of ending these major problems in the world, that it's not I truly believe in our methodology, that we're grassroots, that we're asset-based, that we look at not just what you need today, but why do you need that today? The policies, global policies that make people hungry or displaced or lack access to employment. And so looking at the sustainable, permanent solutions to those issues, not just the short term. help that's needed. I just feel like we've hit all the right buttons. And the fact that when I came back from the Peace Corps, I thought one day I would be working globally, that I would be back in the field working in another country. And I would say probably within a year of working for Church World Service, I realized I don't have a skill set that cannot be found from a local person in the field, from an indigenous leader in a global community. So why would I go somewhere and take their job? I have a skill set to raise funds to then support and build the capacity of people on the ground. And that was a real game changer for me. And so I think working for an organization that recognizes that, yeah, sometimes there are US folks who have a specific skill set that we need to send them into a place. But in general, the fact that Church World Service is building capacity of local leadership is one of the things that I love the most, which I didn't know I would when I started, but it's definitely one of the things I love the most about CWS.
Piggybacking a little bit of what you just said about CWS, I'm sure you've seen this book that was, written after 50 years of Church World Service, and the subtitle was 50 Years of Help and Hope. So if you, would have to come up with a subtitle for another book of 75 years of CWS, what are some of the keywords that you would mention?
Well, Help and Hope are awfully good. I think there's a transformation that has happened in CWS. It's less about help and more about coming alongside. So maybe some catchy way of saying accompaniment, that it's not about we're going to come in as an organization and save the day and provide help and hope, but more we're coming alongside folks. So maybe it's I don't know, I'm not a marketing person, but something that connotes that they're working side by side, shoulder to shoulder. So maybe shoulder to shoulder, changing the equation, shoulder to shoulder, transforming communities. Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't prepared for that question. Sorry.
Well, if you come up with something, let me know along the way. If I have to kind of describe Church World Service over time, I often say, well, it started in 1946 as a U.S. Christian organization that tries to work ecumenically, grassroots, that's key. And then I think where we are now is being more global and interfaith. Would you agree with me? And if so, why? And if you don't agree, can you also explain why?
Oh, no, I totally agree. I think our crop hunger walks are an excellent example of the interfaith part of our work. You have community events pre-COVID when you could gather together, and you would have not just your Christian denominations, but you'd have Sikh and Jewish and Baha'i, and I have one walk where there's a super strong Jain community. And I think that's part of why the crop hunger walks are so beautiful, because we are able to share and connect and to find the things that we have in common and to celebrate the things that we can learn from each other. And it makes us much stronger. It builds those events to be more representative of the community. And I see that while CWS is still supported by the Christian denominations, when you look at the work that we do globally, we're working with staff and partners who represent multi-faith, even no faith. We have folks who are humanists, aren't necessarily tied to particular church or religion or dogma. And I think that makes us stronger, that makes us more credible, and opens the door to more participation. Globally, I think we have to move global. We have to think, because our world is we're no longer able to be isolated in our little communities. We are all connected. As we see through this pandemic, we're all connected. And so we have to do work that is global, that is globally minded, that recognizes that interconnectedness and intersections of culture and religion and ways of being.
Continue our conversations around it. and you are have been very much part of that discussion, is if you look at Church World Service as a brand, it seems that in trying to reach out, especially to a younger audience, we have certain challenges in terms of connecting with the younger audience. And as part of the discussion, we also looked at the name change. And what's your opinion about that in terms of should Church World Service remain Church World Service? Especially the word church seems to be turning off some of the younger generation, or should we keep it? So how do you see this brand, this entity evolving further? What do we need to do to ensure that we can continue the work for another 25 years?
I think having the word church hanging above our doorway closes that door off to people who might, if they did walk through, they would feel comfortable, but because they see church, they think it's not the place for them. So I think taking that word church out would be more inviting to a broader cross-section of people, particularly younger people. I think younger people see church as, in their mind, Christian church is evangelical, conservative, and I think that that's not who we are, but that might be what people think we are. I even have a neighbor who said, I never would have given to Church World Service if you hadn't asked, because I would have thought, oh, it's one of those church groups, but she now donates. So I think, but while I think we need to remove that word church from our welcome mat, I don't think we need to remove the faith component of the work that we do. I think that's really important. I think it's what makes us unique in that we are faith-based organization, but we don't proselytize or evangelize, that we're driven by our belief in seeing the face of God in all people. But if we could find a name or a way that brings people in so they can see that, I think we'll attract younger and even Gen X. They're becoming more and more discontent with the vision of churchy groups that we're seeing in the news and in public.
No, thanks for sharing that. When we were talking about Church World Service, you mentioned a lot of characteristics of this organization, partnership and accompaniment. If I would ask you to name one colleague or a partner, or a partner organization or a supporter of CWS who best embodies of what CWS is about, who would you name and why?
So I believe I would name my former supervisor, who was the regional director for Church World Service. His name's Joe Moran. And Joe, before CWS in his early life, was a Catholic priest living in Central America, and later fell in love with Peace Corps volunteer, left the priesthood, but continued to do the great work of serving God's people wherever they are in need. I think he most embodies CWS because he is driven by a pluralistic vision of faith. So while he was a Catholic priest, he can speak to Buddhist or non-faith folks. He's also someone who understands that he's always the one that points to the other person. When there's a spotlight that should be on him, he was always pointing to someone else. He never took credit for even things that he should have taken credit for. He always gave credit to the colleague or the volunteer or someone who helped him to have that success. And I think that's how CWS is. Sometimes it's a struggle for me as a fundraiser because I want to wave the CWS flag. We're so great, give to us. But truly, we're forever giving credit to our partner or to a local leader or to a sister agency. And I think that's truly the way we need to be. And that's how Joe was, and that's how he still is. He's also very, he worked for us for a very long time, and his passion for the mission never wavered. And I think that's CWS. Our passion for our mission has never wavered. We might have tweaked how we do it or with what partners and what countries, and but we have always been committed from day one until today to that call to serve God and all who need or in all who are in need. And so from that first helping refugees in war-torn Europe to be resettled in the U.S. and sharing our grain with those who are in remaining in war-torn Europe. That same looking at what assets we have to give, to share, has been consistent and steadfast. And that's how Joe was: consistent, steadfast, always compassionate, always caring, and committed to seeing a world where one day all will have enough.
Yeah. No, Joe is absolutely a great guy, and still very active around the crop hunger walks as well. So.
Oh yeah. I think he'll be a saint one day.
Mary Catherine, I ask you to share an anecdote or a memory or an experience. What will you share, please?
I think it's probably my first day on the job. And so I worked with Joe, who I just talked about. And Joe was so excited to finally have a new assistant director. And so on the first day, he had set up meetings for us with Crop Hunger Walk volunteers all across the state of North Carolina. So we met at a gas station not too far from my house, and I got in his car and we traveled to the first meeting, and then we went to the next meeting, and then the next meeting, and it wasn't until probably 10 or 11 o'clock at night when he brought me back to that gas station so I could then head home. And he had never stopped to eat. He never stopped for lunch or dinner. I had a little pita that I'd thrown in my briefcase that when he wasn't looking, I would nibble little pieces of the pita because I was so hungry. God, this is awful. I can't believe we didn't stop anywhere to eat. And I thought, well, maybe he just wants me to have that feeling of hunger so I can speak more profoundly about it. The next day, he called. He said, I cannot believe I was so excited to be taking you to these meetings and preparing you for these presentations. I completely forgot to feed you. I'm so sorry. And I said, well, I thought maybe it was like a test. He said, no. But we often laugh about that truly is though CWS, right? It's empathy. It's trying to listen and understand what people are going through so that we can come alongside them to improve their lives. And I think it was a good way to start my job, to say, let me sit in hunger and feel that before I go preach about it to other folks. As an aside, we traveled quite a bit together after that, and Joe would always pack a cooler after that of snacks so that we could stop at a rest stop somewhere, that he always knew that I would have something to eat on our trips after that.
That's a great story. Thanks. Is there anything that you would like to say or would like to wish for the organization?
I really wish that we will be as critical and effective and impactful 75 years from now. And I truly believe that's going to require us to continue to reach the next generation and inspire them. and inspire them to be a part of what we uniquely bring. And I think we'll get there. Who are coming up with innovative ideas, and they're all focused on the next generation. How can we tap into that passion for making a difference, the passion for having an impact, and help the next generation see that church service is a very unique and appealing way for them to change the world. I think so. Yeah, 75. My hope for CWS is that we are even better 75 years from now.
My last question for you is, I hope to also talk and interview people who have been in charge of our organization, who has worked for us, many, many years ago, decades ago. Is there any specific question that you would like me to ask them?
I might ask something about failure or missed opportunities, because I think that's where we can really learn and innovate. So maybe if I would maybe ask, what is an opportunity that you wish you had taken, or what was something that you tried that didn't quite work and no one let you try again? Because I think sometimes that's the problem. We fail and then we drop it, and instead of retooling it and trying again in a different way. So maybe I would ask that. I guess often people will ask leaders, what was the great thing, and what everybody wants to talk about all that was good. So maybe pushing a little bit on what was one of those failures. Because I think you can learn a lot from those failures if you can innovate and try again.
What has been your greatest failure so far with CWS?
Well, I think my first great failure was the first time that I supervised someone. As many organizations, you do a good job and then they say, great, now you can supervise someone else, but they never really teach you how to supervise. And when that employee left CWS in her exit interview, she just tore me to shreds, and how that I had supervised, which was, in hindsight, probably the greatest gift she could have ever given me, to recognize where I needed to grow as a supervisor, to realize that not everybody needs the same thing. The type of supervision I need wasn't the type of supervision that she needed. It hurt. It hurt a lot. As someone who likes affirmation, it was terrible to hear all that she put in that interview, that exit interview. But it has helped me to be a much stronger leader and support the people that work with me better, having had that hard feedback from her.
And what are you most proud of so far in those 17 years?
I think the fact that we have expanded our fundraising portfolio. I think when I started, we really relied upon crop hunger walks, and that was it. And I think a lot of it was necessity, but under my leadership, we were given the freedom to expand and to try new things. And so being able to add in the ration challenge and virtual walks and ramping up how we do our best gift, how we use social media to raise funds. So I think the fact that we've been able to diversify the ways that people can engage in raising funds for CWS is probably one of my proud points.
Great. Well, thank you, Mary Catherine, for your time and sharing your experience, and for everything you do. I'm thankful, very thankful to work with you. So, and I think the organization is also very thankful.
Well, I'm grateful every morning to wake up and to know the bottom line isn't some CEO's pocket. I get to work every day to build a better world, and that's a true gift and a real blessing. I'm BWS and able to do that.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're listening to a double episode of the podcast Walk, Talk, Listen, so stay tuned because we will have another episode for you. This is another episode of our podcast about church world service. And like always, I'm really delighted to be able to speak with one of my colleagues who will introduce herself. Please, Rebekah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Rebekah Belase, the Senior Director of our Funds Development team with CWS.
And Rebekah, how many years are you working presently with CWS?
I've been with CWS for 9.5 years, and I'm located in Oklahoma.
And I assume that you did not start as the director. So how did you start?
So when I started with CWS, I was actually, forget my title, but I worked with our funds development team, and I was a field staff person working with a portfolio of churches and crop hunger walks for a 5-state area.
How did you get involved with CWS? Did you see an advertisement? How did that happen?
So actually my husband found the advertisement and showed it to me, and he said, "Oh my gosh, I think this aligns with everything you went to seminary for. I think you would love it." And I thought, oh, I don't know about that. I didn't go to seminary to be a fundraiser. But I'd learned in my last position when I was a campus minister, fundraising had been a part of my job, and so I applied for it, and I guess the rest is history. I was asked to be a part of the Great West team and started in the Topeka, Kansas office, and I loved it.
Had you heard about CWS before you applied?
So I see it as a 2-part answer. So I have a prop.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'll remember these cards, Maurice. So I graduated college in 1999, and I went to go work for my first church, Village United Methodist Church in Oklahoma City, and I was their minister of Christian education. And when I started, I found these cards in my desk. Can you see them?
And for
do you remember these cards?
Yeah. So for the listeners, you have to describe them.
So the cards they had a series of cards from the National Council of Churches, is my guess. And they were great cards. They have scripture on them, and some of the cards say, "Let justice flow like water and integrity like an unfailing stream," Amos 5. Or there is one that's my favorite, that is the Micah 6 verse. "This is what Yahweh asks of you, to act justly, to love tenderly, and to walk humbly with your God." And so I found these cards at the church, and I had kept a sample of them because I loved them so much. And then when I came to work for Church World Service, I went into the supply closet and saw the big posters that people used in the field. And I said, "Oh my goodness, I know those cards." And my husband had them framed for me. So that's my first indirect with Church World Service. When I was a campus minister in Stillwater at Oklahoma State University with the Wesley Foundation, our campus ministry was invited to participate in the Crop Hunger Walk in Stillwater. And then the church that my husband was serving at the time, Highland Park United Methodist Church, was very active in the Blanket Sunday and participated through the blanket offering. And the town's community was involved. The Church of United gave to the blanket and supported the work of Church World Service.
You are ordained, right? So walk us a little bit through your education and your path until you started working with Church World Service.
So in high school, our church would sometimes have international speakers, and my mom kept this bulletin. We had a speaker, I think, from, I don't remember what country, out of the country though, and they were talking, and I had written a note to say, how cool would it be to visit this place, to be a missionary and go there? And my mom kept it all these years. And in high school, I knew I wanted to do something more, but I didn't know what that looked like. And I went to Oklahoma City University. I was a religion major. And during that time, the United Methodist Church came out with a new order, the Order of Deacons. And the deacon, um, one of their primary roles is to connect the church to the world. And I thought, oh my gosh, what a great ministry to be a part of, to be able to be the pathway back and forth, to take the joys and concerns of the world into the church and likewise. And so the Order of Deacon is how I started pursuing my ministry track. I graduated, I worked 2 years at a church and then went to seminary in Kansas City at St. Paul School of Theology in Kansas City, Missouri. And during that time, I also interned with the Women's Correctional Facility in Topeka. And I was a chaplain intern and did my senior capstone project on restorative justice, and graduated with my Master's of Arts in Specialized Ministry, and started on the track to ordination in the Methodist Church, and was commissioned in 2006 and ordained in 2009
Wow.
with the Oklahoma Conference.
Yeah. And when I listen to you, it seems that in everything you did until you started working for CWS, you were really involved with people, right? Because in your present job, you talk with people. It's more on the phone and stuff. So don't you miss that?
I do. I try to find ways where my boss doesn't know that I'm making trips to individuals to talk with them.
Yeah.
No, I think that's the part I love. I loved being out in the field, hearing the great stories from volunteers in Nebraska. When I first started my first year, there were some great Nebraska volunteers in Omaha and Lincoln, and they would tell the stories of the grain trains coming through Nebraska and collecting the grain. Some first generation people that helped start the crop hunger walks in those locations. And so to be with volunteers and donors has always been an important part of that. And I still find ways to be involved with volunteers and donors in different ways. But it's the part I love the most, to hear their stories, to hear transformation of their own experience when they've gone on trips to see the work of CWS in the field, and to bring it to life.
Can you share one of those stories that you heard where folks after a trip really felt that they went through a transformation?
Yes, one of my volunteers in Norman, Oklahoma tells of a story. She went with CWS to Kenya and was connected with this group from Kansas City, and they had raised money for a well to be put in Kenya. And they had actually taken a memorial gift from these parents' daughter, and she wanted this well to be built. And so they took water from Kansas City and took it to Kenya. When they built the well, they were there to see it, and they added her water, the Kansas City water, to the Kenya water to signify this connection between the two locations and this memorial gift. And she was there to see that.
Wow, I'd never heard of such a story. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great one.
Have you? I'm assuming you made trips yourself as well abroad. And can you share, one of the experiences you had during one of those trips?
One of the trips I was fortunate to go on, was to Serbia, Georgia, and to see some of the projects. As a United Methodist woman, I had heard stories of us supporting the people of Roma, and there had been Bible studies about it, but to actually see and visit the children and the sites where our programs have been working, and the after-school projects, to see kids to have a safe location to have food and a shower, and the facilities of friendship in these locations, what was even more empowering for me to tell the story and want to encourage more giving to strengthen the projects.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've been to the Roma myself, so it's yeah, that's I mean, I've seen a lot in the world, but that's definitely it's kind of difficult to comprehend it for on two levels. One is that they're still not accepted as being part of that particular country, and then the other part is the fact that children have to grow up under very difficult circumstances, right? So and a right to school to learn, the right to education is one example of the access they often don't have for a number of reasons. Yeah.
And I thought of the things that we take for granted, like school trips. I sign a form for my kids to take a school trip, and the bus is provided, and they go, and it's nothing to me. And when we were there, the shelter was telling us they were able to provide an opportunity for one of the kids to go on a trip. It was their first time, and they were able to give them a suitcase to go on this school trip that they would not have been able to go on. So it's little things like that that you don't think of as a parent, but is so important.
Yeah. No, exactly. I think you alluded a little bit to it already, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What do you like about the work of CWS?
Gosh, nothing. No, I'm kidding.
I'm going to use that.
I think for me, it's just even grown and enhanced over time. Being able to be in the field, to meet with volunteers, to see their passion, to see their hard work and dedication and their commitment to the Crop Hunger Walk, to make sure that people are fed in their own local community, but then also the importance of the global community. And then even in my new role, to help hire people for our team, to see, I get to reflect every time how much I enjoy our team, our work, and how important it is, and all the roles that we play to help CWS be successful in the field, and working with donors and volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the people, the mission, everything we do.
I am assuming you're familiar with this particular book that was written,
Yes.
to celebrate 50 years of Church World Service. And the subtitle is, or the title is 50 Years of Help and Hope. If I would ask you to write a book about 75 years of CWS, what would be the subtitle or the title, or, mention some of the keywords that would kind of capture 75 years of CWS, according to you?
So I think hope is still a big part of that. I think hope is such a great word. I mean, it's still looking to the future, and I think we're still doing a big part of that. I mean, if we're to fulfill our jobs, our hope is that no one goes to bed hungry. That our hope is that people do have a safe place to call home. And while that may not happen in my lifetime, I am hopeful that it still will. I don't know. We're moving with, the global migration and immigration, and still disaster and displacement. So whatever good word goes with all that.
Yeah.
But I also think mission and experience. I mean, for the new generations that are coming, I mean, these hands-on experiences that's tangible to them. Even for us as youth, I mean, the hands-on component is so important. So to learn about what it is to be with CWS and to be in the field, and to really learn about the work, is to see it and experience it. And then once you have that experience, it makes you grateful for going to the kitchen to get water, or going to the bathroom and having a toilet. And all those things, you can see it, and then you can share the story and the impact that you were able to witness.
Let me piggyback a little bit on the young youth. You mentioned the youth, and well, it's not a secret that we have challenges in terms of reaching out to this younger generation. And well, you're very much aware that we have worked with the company and are still working with the company to look at, do we need a rebrand, or do we, are there certain changes that we can make as an organization to to connect in a better way with that younger generation? And part of that conversation is also to look at a potential name change. Where are you on that? How do you look at that challenge that we have, and what type of ideas do you have around it?
So I think I see us as a global organization. I also come from the church background, so for me, the interfaith is important. I think um, our history has been this ecumenical work. I think as we move, it now has become more interfaith, but I see us as a global organization. Um, and even though we come from this faith background, I think we're open. Like there's an openness to all and any who want to see a better world or a global humanitarian. I don't think it sways anyone from participating.
Yeah. So you would you think if it will help us to reach a younger audience, wherever they are. And I think you're right. I would agree with you that we have grown, we have evolved from a US organization to a global, and from ecumenical to interfaith. I would agree with you there. That we should not, throw, picking another name overboard.
Right.
Be open to whatever might work. I would agree there in terms of, as long as you stay true to why you were established and true to your values. But I think if you compare Church World Service in 46 and look at 2020, we are, in many ways we are still the same, but in many ways we are also different than when we started. We should be applauded for that, actually, in terms of being much more welcoming.
And to see, when we were in Asia, to see the global churches that are participating at the local level. So it's not just U.S. churches supporting the work. It's global churches that are also supporting the work locally.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Church World Service is such a peculiar organization with many perspectives and in many phases, and still somehow it's all connected. If I'm asking you, name a colleague or a partner or a supporter of Church World Service that best embodies of what CWS is about, who will you name and why?
So my answer is, I feel like it's the Sunday school answer. I would say for me, it's the Church Universal. It's not just our member communions. It's people of faith who want to respond, who want to act. It is the member communions and denominations that help make up CWS, but it's bigger than that. It's people of faith who want to respond. It's people who, in general, just want to do good and are looking for that organization that they can trust, that can help do good in the world. So I think it is the Church Universal. I'm not naming just one person. But I think from the history, it was the church that helped really launch us. And I know some people think the church is dying. I don't think the church is dying. I think it looks different. It may be people who aren't relating, but are faith driven. So I still think that's a part of who we are.
Interesting that you say that the church is not dying. I just finished a podcast with an ex-colleague of yours who said the same thing. And he said,
well, we agree.
The church might getting in a different form or shape in how we know it. It's separate from a building. It's
I think we've seen that in this pandemic right now. People are saying the church is not closed. The church has finally left the building. We are in the streets safely. We are worshiping in our homes virtually. It's still important that we're connected. And I think some people are finding, other voices that they realize they're out of the church. They need to be connected more to the community. I think they're starting local, but then I think they also say, look at our neighbors globally. They are facing challenges like we are right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, and thinking a little bit about the future and about our setup, what do you hope to see within CWS? And I'm talking here about our staffing structure and how we work together, and or does the staffing structure that we have and the way we work together, does it reflect properly that we are this global organization, or do you think that certain changes need to be made? How do you see it? What do you wish for?
I think that our staffing structure, it is a global partnership. I mean, as we look at fundraising and philanthropy, I think funds development team does a great job. And, um, but, but being able to connect to the global partners is another thing that makes CWS so strong, that they directly work with the partners. Whatever structure that looks like, I think those were some of the things to keep.
What do you want to say, or what do you want to wish for CWS?
I think my wish is that we've had 75 years of success, and I hope to see 75 years and more of success. I think the foundation that CWS started with and took on is still important work. Many from the National Council of Churches, that there is no other group like CWS that takes and allows for ecumenical bodies to work together. I think the way that we all are able to come together makes for a stronger impact, that we're not duplicating work, kind of like the ACT Alliance from the NGO side. I think for the faith component, that we're able to offer something that isn't very prominent right now. I think local communities are still working together in their own kind of small ecumenical groups and alliances, but we are this kind of global, I think, interfaith partnership that allows all these different groups to come together. And I think CWS does it well. And I hope that as we still move forward, we're able to connect to younger people and younger individuals to help take up the mantle from those that are going to the great cloud of witnesses.
Let me, because you are very much part of the fundraising part of Church World Service, what are you most proud of, in terms of steps forward, improvement?
I think one thing I'm most proud of is the way that our team has been able to adapt throughout the years as we've downsized and had to kind of re-find ourselves with a smaller team. I just think it's made our current team stronger. I just think we have such an excellent pool of colleagues on the funds development team. I was talking with Mary Catherine, and after each interview process, I think, gosh, if I was hiring and looking for a job right now, I don't know that I would make the cut anymore. Our colleagues that we're hiring are so good that I may not be as good as I used to be.
I think you're underestimating yourself, but yeah.
But I think the level of staff that we're getting that see themselves as fundraisers and as community builders and bridgers is a strength that we have right now, and it comes from a great foundation that was that was shaped in the last few years too from previous staff.
Where you wish you would like to see more progress, and if you are able to identify an area, what are some of the things that you would like to see in order to improve that part as well?
Well, I think you always think, okay, if I could have called 10 more people today and
Hmm.
raised so much more. And I think our staff just sometimes feel the internal pressure that they want to be good stewards of the donors' dollars. And there's only so many hours in a day to do your
Hmm.
job. And if you can, you know, drive 200 miles more to have 3 more meetings. So how do we help our staff think strategically and smarter so they're able to have those strong relationships even without the distance? So how do we help our teams think that way?
Hmm.
Um,
Talking about teams and staff and colleagues, how well is CWS doing in terms of taking care of its staff? And I'm raising this question especially because now, because of, we, while we are doing this interview, we are in the middle of the pandemic still. You hear not only within CWS but all around us that mental health is a big one for everybody, because the pandemic is not the only thing that's going on. There are so many other things happening as well. um, how do you think we are doing on a scale of 1 to 10? um, and have we grown there as an organization over the years in trying to support? And not, of course salary is always part of it, but I'm talking more about the whole package in terms of taking care of each other and staff care.
I think CWS ranks pretty high for staff care. I mean, when I talk to staff, they feel appreciated. Um, I would say that I think our own team would probably rank the national headquarter maybe like a point below what our team does because we're so intentional. But I think that probably makes sense.
Mhm.
They might say, I feel like an 8 from our FDM unit.
Mhm.
Our team was already virtual. Most of our staff work remotely anyway, and so we already had built-in procedures and check-ins for for such a time as this
Mhm.
without knowing it. So people don't feel like they're on an island by themselves. I think that one thing I feel so great about is that we are so intentional. Like, we do want the whole person to feel supported in our team, um, whether it's by their manager, the team, or CWS headquarter. I think that's what we're always trying to promote. I think we've also put an importance on continuing education over the last few years to say, especially this past year during the pandemic, to say, since you're not traveling, take some time and take a class or two. Like, let's continue this continuing education
Mhm.
process, and make sure that you're giving yourself grace. Some weeks may be hard, but give yourself grace during this time. I mean, you have people who are usually on the road traveling, and that's a part of their makeup, and now they're just home like everyone else. So even adapting your work style has been different.
Mhm.
But I guess my hope would be that our staff, I mean, I feel like we do a great job at that
Mm.
within FDM leadership.
Okay. Um, Rebecca, can you share an anecdote or experience which best describes your time with CWS?
So, in thinking about this question, I thought of a little snippet that was given to me on my ordination. And it talks about how will we know when we have enough deacons. But I really love it, and I think it also describes the work of CWS. So I'll share it with you now. Um, how will we know when we have enough deacons? When all the needs of the marginalized and vulnerable are met, to gather the gifts of the church and take them to the world, and to gather the needs of the world and bring them to the church has become a habit. Deacons going back and forth have worn down the boundary lines that we use to keep the church and the world separated. Deacons leading the baptized in and out have beaten down a path between the altar and the gutter, so that everyone will see the link between the blood in our chalices and the blood in our streets. All people respond to the challenge to live, not in the love of power, but in the power of love. And so I think that talks about our work, where all are called for a better world, that we're called to tear down these boundary lines, to help others, that everyone is a neighbor, and and that there are needs that continue, but that they need to be met, that the marginalized and the vulnerable are not forgotten from the church, but the church comes out into the world and brings people back and forth. I keep it by my computer. Like, it
Yeah.
was given to me at my ordination, and I just, it's my reminder
Mm.
of what I do. Like, to me, for my work, it's to help. I mean, we've got to get people out of the church. The church is not just in these walls, and get out into the world. Like, this is where the hurt and the need is. So we have to get out of the walls, and that's my major call.
Anything that you wanted to share that we did not address as yet?
Get students in the pipeline. You have to start,
Yeah.
get them thinking about what it means to be in mission and service, and the philanthropy thought. Like, if your parents aren't teaching you that, but you're connected to a church and you have the opportunity to go,
Mm.
then your life has changed forever. Like,
Yeah.
your philanthropy landscape at that moment is changed.
Okay.
Okay, sir, good luck.
Bye.
Do you see you? Do you see me? Will you be the eyes so that we all
Thank you for
can
listening
be?
to Walk, Talk, Listen. Please check us out on 100mile.org or follow us on Facebook or Instagram. And if you want to know more about Church World Service, please check out cwsglobal.org. Thank you.